Ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister Plenković has met with Mr. Mark Rutte, Secretary General of the NATO, who is visiting Croatia. Following the meeting, which addressed key security challenges, strengthening European defense and the modernization of Croatian army, we are now having a press statement. So, Prime Minister Plenković, the floor is yours. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, warm welcome to my friend Mark Rutte, Secretary General of the NATO and former Dutch Prime Minister. He visited us 2 years ago, but he was in a different position. I'm very happy to see him for the first time in Croatia as the Secretary General, at the moment when the world and Europe are facing very demanding and challenging circumstances. This global insecurity is here. We are still witnessing brutal aggression of Russia against Ukraine. In terms of complying with the international law, and there are several other areas which are critical, and it deserves our full attention, involvement and vigilance. So today's meeting was an opportunity to inform Secretary General with activities that the Croatian government has undertaken in order to meet the taken over obligations that have been taken over in the past several years. First of all, to reach 2% of the GDP as defense spending and related activities, which according to the NATO criteria are included in these expenses. I would like to thank Minister Anušić here and Minister Grlić Radman, who have taken part in meetings. Thank you to the Chief of the General Staff, General Kundit. Thank you for all the information that you have contributed. 2025 ended with 2.8% of defense spending in 2025. It was above the Ministry of Defense budget, which exceeds $1.5 billion. So in total, $1,900,000,000 budget, which meets the criteria when it comes to the percentage related to modernization. So it is a minimum of 20%. Croatia is now almost at 34%. We are particularly happy to say that these activities have been complemented with the purchase of new modern technologies, such as Caesar, self-propelled and Leopard 2.8 of German and other equipment. Croatia, in that regard, has been using new instruments for defense, such as the SAFE instrument. We took €1.7 billion loan to finance defense expenses in the years to come. Very importantly, Croatia is a responsible and serious member of the alliance since 2009, and our forces participate in 5 missions with 270 members of our army. We have been present in Kosovo for years, in Poland, Hungary, Lithuania, and around 90 Croatian troops will be sent to Lithuania, and smaller but significant symbolic presence in NATO's mission in Iraq. Today, we also talked about our contribution to Ukraine, a friendly country, a victim of Russian aggression. Croatian government has in the past several years contributed with 15 packages of military assistance. The last one in last week's government session, when decision was made. And we also contributed in the prioritized Ukraine requirement list, the so-called Pearl, that NATO is controlling and coordinating in order to acquire weapons that is only produced in the United States And thus we have also contributed and helped Ukraine in its efforts to defend its freedom. Ukraine is not defending only its freedom, it is defending Europe's democracy and freedom. And that's why the consequences of Russian aggression have become more than evident in the entire continent. In Croatia, energy situation, we have had energy crisis, economic pressure, social and inflationary pressures. All this was and has been connected to the wider destabilization that we have gone through in the past period. We have also announced that in 2027, in spring, Croatia would host an informal meeting of NATO foreign ministers. And we want our participation as a country that is not that large in size, but we are serious, responsible, a reliable partner and ally that we have been so far. So today's visit of the Secretary General is very important, and I'm happy to say that in the morning we went to Pleso. The General Secretary had an opportunity to see Croatian combat aircrafts, Rafale, Black Hawk helicopters, and also unmanned aircrafts, Bayraktar. So the Secretary General got an insight into a very serious system and the process of replacing Eastern military technology with the Western one, the process that we have been undertaking for the past decade. And today we see that this system has serious capacities and capabilities which are compatible with our allies. And all of this has strengthened Croatian defense and its capabilities in the long term. And I also look forward to our afternoon. We will have a meeting with the Croatian Defense Industry Cluster. Thank you, Minister of Defense, you have invited practically all producers of all military equipment manufactured in Croatia, so that Secretary General can get an insight into what this part of our economy is doing. And it is doing very well. It is export-oriented. Of course, we also addressed a number of security challenges that relate to global environment, our region, and we have also talked about the situation post the Coalition of the Willing Paris meeting, and we will continue to talk about this after our lunch. Once again, Mark, welcome, and I'm happy to see you here in Zagreb.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Plenković. Dear Andrej, let me also acknowledge the presence of the two ministers. Good that you are here, and the Chief of Defense. Thank you for hosting me here in beautiful Zagreb. It's always a pleasure to be here. Since joining the alliance in 2009, Croatia has been a valued member of NATO. It contributes significantly to our collective security, not only on our eastern flank and in the Western Balkans, but across the entire alliance. Just before the holidays, I met Croatian troops in Poland as part of NATO's forward land forces in Bemowo-Picki. And it was inspiring to meet so many servicemen and women spending Christmas away from their families, standing watch, keeping us all safe. Croatia also contributes personnel to our forward land forces in Bulgaria and Hungary. And I welcome your efforts to modernize the capabilities of the Croatian armed forces and the way Croatia's defense industry indeed is stepping up, particularly in driving innovation in the field of uncrewed systems. I'm looking forward to the meeting, and you already announced it, this afternoon with representatives from the defense industry. And I was really impressed this morning to see how you have revamped Croatia's Air Force in just a couple of years. You are already spending more than 2% of GDP on defense and are working to reach the 5% benchmark by 2035, as all allies agreed at the summit in The Hague. And I also welcome that as of the 1st of January this year, the Croatian Air Force officially assumed full responsibility for protecting Croatian airspace. Croatia is also making good on the commitment allies made to sustain our unwavering support for Ukraine. Since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, Croatia has been a strong and reliable supporter of Ukraine. In addition to your recent €50 million contribution to, indeed, you already mentioned it, the prioritized Ukraine requirement list, Pearl, Croatia has provided now over €300 million in military aid since 2022. You have supplied helicopters, transport aircraft, artillery systems, ammunition, protective equipment, and much more. Russia's brutal war of aggression continues, and we saw just last week the use of the Orashnik missile on Lviv and continued attacks on civilian and energy infrastructure. Russia is trying to deter us from supporting Ukraine, but we will not be deterred. As Ukraine faces immense pressure during the harsh winter, your support and the support of all NATO allies is more important than ever. Ukraine's security is our security. And under your leadership, Prime Minister Plenković, Croatia has truly been a vital partner to our Ukrainian friends. Croatia also plays an important role in sustaining stability in the Western Balkans. You are a long-standing contributor to KFOR, with more than 150 troops on the ground in Kosovo. The Western Balkans remain high on NATO's agenda, and our commitment to the region's stability is steadfast. With your support, we will not allow a security vacuum to emerge, and NATO will continue to strengthen political dialogue and practical cooperation across the region. Prime Minister Plenković, dear Andrej, thank you for your warm hospitality and again for Croatia's steadfast support to our alliance and everything we collectively stand for. Thank you.
Zahvaljujemo na uvodnim izlaganjima.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Secretary General. We have time for questions. Please respect time. We have time for only a few questions. Jasmina Kuzmanović.
Hi.
Secretary General, hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So a group of European countries led by the UK and Germany are apparently planning to increase, or actually to have some military presence on the Arctic, on Greenland. Could you tell us more about these plans? Would it be like the Baltic Sentry of the last year initiative, or how would it look, and how far the plans have gone? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. And let me first of all stress that all allies agree on the importance of the Arctic and Arctic security, because we know that with sea lanes opening up, there is a risk that the Russians and the Chinese will be more active. And as you know, there are 8 Arctic countries, 7 are within NATO, including the United States and Canada, and 5 countries in Europe, including Denmark through Greenland and Iceland and Norway, Finland and Sweden. And then there is one Arctic country outside NATO, and that is Russia. But you could also argue that by now China has almost become a sort of Arctic country, not geographically, but at least by the sheer amount of their activities and interest in the region. So that has led last year already to some debates, very successful concluded debates in NATO on how, as an alliance, together with our 7 Arctic allies, we have to work together to make sure that the Arctic stays safe. And currently we are discussing the next step to that, how to make sure that we give practical follow-up on those discussions to make sure that as an alliance we do everything collectively and through our individual allies to make sure that the Arctic stays safe, as we all agree that that has to be a priority.
Hi.
Hi.
Also a question for you, Secretary General. My name is Anabela Lajko from the Croatian Radio. You have repeatedly stated that Russia is the main threat to NATO and to Europe, of course, understandably. We all understand why. What is your comment, approximation on latest statements from Donald Trump, who said that if necessary he will take military action on Greenland? And I'm just going to read it. Commissioner Kubilius from European Commission has said that EU members are obliged to come to Denmark's assistance under EU treaty if faced with military aggression. And as we know, 23 countries of EU are also members of NATO. Gospodine Plenković, including Croatia, yes. Gospodine Plenković, evo isto vaš komentar, molim na to. Hvala.
Yes, well, on that question, and it is a little bit, I think, repeating my previous reaction, but thank you very much for that important question. And I think what is at core here, and to the core of this question is that we all make that same analysis, and there is no debate or discussion about that. The analysis is sound and is there that when it comes to the High North, the Arctic region, I was myself visiting Iceland only, I think, 6 or 8 weeks ago, and we also extensively discussed this, and I was in Norway and visiting other allies, discussing with the US and with Canada. I was with Prime Minister Carney last week in Paris, discussing the importance of the Arctic. So collectively, as an alliance, and particularly, of course, the 7 countries who are bordering on the region, we do make this analysis that the collective defense is crucial. We all see that through changes in weather patterns that sea lanes are opening up. And we have to make sure that we do everything to protect that region. It is a vital part of NATO territory. And that is exactly why, where in the past NATO was not so much involved when it came to the Arctic, that since 2025, on the request by these 7 High North allies who are bordering on the Arctic, that NATO has become more involved. This has led to a few, as I said, very successful discussions within the NATO alliance with our ambassadors in Brussels and our ministers. We discussed this importance, and currently we are working on the next steps to make sure that indeed we collectively protect what is at stake here.
Allow me to add a few words related to Greenland, Denmark, and the signals that have been coming from the US administration. We have been communicating with the Danish government, with Prime Minister Frederiksen. We were in Paris together last week. And this week, according to announcement, there will be a meeting with State Secretary Rubio. The message of all allies and all EU members is that allies have to respect each other, including the US as the largest NATO member. It is obvious what Secretary General said, that there is some concern for the area of Arctic, which includes Greenland, but I am confident that with discussion we can find a solution that will ensure security for the US, and it will make sure that Greenland is a part of Denmark, although it's not in the EU, but it is clear that it is within the authority of Denmark. That's why a high-quality dialogue is necessary, and it can definitely resolve this situation for the benefit of the global security.
Yes, ma'am. Hi.
For Secretary General, so the new peace plan for Ukraine, the 20-point peace plan, mentions security guarantees similar to Article 5 from NATO. So my question is, if those guarantees resemble Article 5, why not give Ukraine the real deal, the real Article 5 and NATO membership? Are the doors of NATO closed for Ukraine? And za premijera Plenkovića, što vi kažete?
Prime Minister Plenković, a question for you about the security guarantees.
NATO membership of Ukraine, there was a summit in Washington in 2024 which was very clear and restated in the specific words of that summit statement the irreversible path of Ukraine into NATO. So that was the political commitment in 2024, and that still stands. At the same time, we know that several allies, including Hungary and the United States and some others, are either against or very much doubtful about full NATO membership for Ukraine. That is a given, that is a fact. And at the moment, we have to deal with the situation in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia, particularly since the brutal, unprovoked onslaught of Russia against Ukraine starting in February 22. And what is being discussed now with the United States, with all NATO allies, within the coalition of the willing, led by and originally organized and led by the French and the Brits, is how, after a full peace deal / a long-term ceasefire, how to make sure that Russia will never ever attack again. And if it is then not NATO, what then? And that's exactly the debate which is now currently taking place. The US is very important here. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are playing a very positive role here, together with Marco Rubio, under the guidance of President Trump, who has broken a deadlock with Putin by starting to dialogue with him. And he had to do that. He was the only one who could do this, and I was very happy he did, starting in February last year. And last week in Paris, and we were both there, I think we made big progress on nailing as much as possible what those security guarantees will be in 3 levels. Level 1 being the Ukrainian armed forces. Level 2, a coalition of the willing organizing itself in such a way that it will help to build up the Ukrainian armed forces, but also functioning clearly collectively as, in addition to the Ukrainian armed forces, protecting, at least preventing the Russians from getting into a position where they want to attack again, but also the US being heavily involved in various ways, as we discussed last week in Paris. So we have these 3 layers. That was very successful. That is now being finalized next to everything which is needed when it comes to the reconstruction of Ukraine. And obviously that still leaves the very sensitive issue of territory. Very sensitive, where in the end it has to be the Ukrainian government taking the decisions on what they want to do, yes or no, when it comes to territory. But they need to know that whenever that moment comes, when they have to decide on territory, that they have the full backing, not only of their own armed forces, but also of this coalition of the willing, the United States, to collectively make sure that indeed the Russians will not repeat what they did after 2014, 2015 with the Minsk agreement, which is attacking Ukraine again.
Allow me to add a few words. This is a relevant topic, and I myself participated in the Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris. Allow me to explain what the position of Croatia is and what is really happening. So the United States have a strong desire to create preconditions for peace. This is the key message of President Trump and his administration, and it is a more than welcome message. It has been welcomed by everyone. In order to secure the peace, the other side has to agree to this peace, in this case Russia. Russia is the aggressor on the Ukrainian territory for the past 4 years now. Right now, the problem is the fact that Russia first wants to agree and then ceasefire. Coalition of the willing discussed in Paris proposed first ceasefire as the first step and then peace agreement as the following steps. We believe that on the basis of Croatian specific experience, Ukraine should never de jure give up on its territory, of the occupied territory. This is a topic that is very important, because this would be a reward for the aggressor, or it would be a concession that would be impossible to defend internally. So it is a very complex issue of giving up territory, and that's why international peace agreement, it is quite demanding. Russia does not want to see things as they are today. Russia wants to re-establish relations with the United States. It is the main goal. So Ukraine is just an instrument in how to achieve that goal. Then Russia wants to see the removal of the sanction. And thirdly, Russia wants rehabilitation on the international scene. And these are the parallel processes which we see happening right now. Croatia's position is clear. We have said many times that the government is clear about how to participate in Ukrainian territory when it comes to Croatian troops. It is not an option for us to participate, to be there on the ground, but like other members of the coalition of the willing, we will find ways to help Ukraine, as we have been helping so far, either in terms of political support, energy support. So last week, the government agreed with the Croatian power supply to have a part of our energy infrastructure which is not used, is donated to Ukraine. and a large chunk of Ukrainian infrastructure has been targeted in wintertime and was destroyed. Today, people are living on minus 20 Celsius degrees, and they have no possibility to have the system functioning. Their experts recognize that our technology is compatible, and that's why we decided to donate some of our technology that we are not using to Ukraine. And we also plan to continue with bilateral military aid packages, because only strong Ukrainian army can in future prevent a new aggression on its territory. In 2014, there was first aggression, and then 2022, the second one in Ukraine. And of course, for Ukrainian people, the Memorandum of Budapest, more than 30 years ago, they agreed to remove nuclear arsenal from its territory so that large powers can guarantee security. Unfortunately, this has not been maintained for 2.5 decades later. So that's why the entire perspective with security guarantees that are similar to Article 5 are very important. Right now, we don't have a consensus of allies about Ukraine's membership, and this decision has to be unanimous. If some members disagree, then we do not have anything to talk about here. That's why we have other options providing security support to Ukraine in these difficult times. Question for both. 4 years ago, a drone was shot down in Zagreb. It went through 3 NATO members. What is the level of security of NATO airspace?
That's a very good question. And by the way, let me first of all commend Croatia for now taking over the control of its own airspace with the latest investments. And I was really impressed this morning to see with my own eyes the people operating that system, and of course the gear you have bought from the French and from Turkey and from the US to indeed for you to be able to control the Croatian airspace, but also to provide your help and when necessary and your support to other NATO allies wherever necessary and where you can do that. When it comes to drones, we have seen, of course, drone incursions last year in September in Poland. We have seen MIG entering the airspace of Estonia a couple of weeks later in September. Whatever exactly was it intentional or not, at least it was reckless. And this is the reason why our new, relatively new, he started in July, but still relatively new, Supreme Allied Commander, Andrej Plenković, the general who is now leading NATO's military side, has decided to start with full support of the rest of NATO and all the allies, Eastern Sentry. And Eastern Sentry is making sure that we bring together, when it comes to, for example, drones and airspace incursions and protecting allied territory, brings together all our allies, all our capabilities from the Black Sea up to the High North to make sure, mirroring what we have done with Baltic Sentry, making sure that we are much more effective to control our airspace, to protect our territory on land, sea and air, but also to become better and better and better in implementing the latest drone technologies. We are learning here, by the way, from Ukraine. We have a joint NATO-Ukraine activity center in Poland, JTEC, where we analyze and train when it comes to all the insights from the war in Ukraine. And unfortunately, of course, this is taking place in Ukraine, but Ukraine is helping us to learn. When in Copenhagen in October, there were 2 big meetings taking place, the European Council informal and the European political community, and there were big worries about drones over Copenhagen. It was Ukraine, with support from allies and NATO, to help Denmark to be better in terms of understanding and also fending off those threats. So here we are learning from Ukraine, working with Ukraine, also to become better ourselves when it comes to drones. And I was really impressed this morning, again, when I saw what you are buying from Turkey in terms of drone technology. And of course, you have your own, when it comes to drones, your own industry here in Croatia, which is commendable.
Just a few words several years ago, in 2022, yes, a drone fell in Croatia. Right now, we have Rafale. We have Rafale aircrafts. We did not have MiG aircrafts at that time. But now we have the reaction, 15-minute reaction time of any kind of intelligence. So the entire cooperation that is on the NATO level has been raised to a higher level, which means that the countries that any such drone might come from, their readiness is also much higher. So the recognition of the threat is at a much higher level. So with our European system, which is in the new investment phase and increasing the capabilities and capacity, are in a much better position now than 4 years ago. Do we know where did this drone come from? That the one that fell 4 years ago in Croatia. Do you know where this drone came from? Yes, we have information. It came from Ukrainian territory and it flew over Hungary. We said it many times. At that time, Hungarian services did not see it, did not identify it, and that's why we did not expect this drone in Croatian space. Last question.
Follow up on my colleague's question. Where exactly from in Ukraine, and who was the one who shot the projectile? Do we know that now?
No.
No, we don't know that. NATO doesn't know that. Okay.
No, we don't know this. NATO doesn't know that.
You're more than welcome to offer your perspective. Secretary General, can you recall a larger internal crisis that NATO has faced than the one the alliance is facing now, with Donald Trump saying we should go to Greenland and, take it? Or do you even see that as an internal crisis? Or is it not a crisis at all? And is the best way of communicating with Mr. Trump and trying to maybe smooth the relationship is the way that you have been using communication so far, which was basically flooding him with compliments and calling him daddy? Thank you.
Yeah, let me start with challenge you a bit on the second part of your question. What I always do is when people are helpful for the alliance and are doing good stuff, and I believe that Donald Trump is doing the right things for NATO, by encouraging us all to spend more, to equalize this what the US is spending. We had a very successful summit in The Hague, where we decided on the 5% defense spending, including 3.5% from core defense. I'm absolutely convinced without Donald Trump, we would never have had that result at the summit in The Hague. We have now the whole of the alliance on this famous 2%, which we announced in 2014 in Wales. I'm absolutely convinced without Donald Trump, we would not have the whole alliance at this moment on the 2% and now working towards the 3.5%, incredible steps. So when I praise somebody, it is based on facts, and I believe the facts are there. We might disagree, but that is how I see this. As NATO Secretary General, it is my role to make sure that the whole of the alliance is as secure and safe as possible. And I applaud the fact that our colleagues who are bordering on the Arctic have come together, have worked together, and have decided to get NATO more and more involved. This was the discussion in Brussels I referred to in answering a few previous questions. Earlier last year in September and other moments last year when they discussed the High North. And we are now building on that. You've seen some announcements by the Brits and the Germans today. We are working now together to see how we can basically together as an alliance, including our 7 members, our allies bordering on the High North, on the Arctic, to work together to indeed build that next step, which is crucial. That's the United States, that's Canada, that's Iceland, Denmark, and the other European countries bordering on the High North, all 7, but of course with the whole of the alliance. By the way, as we speak, we see Denmark at the moment already speeding up their investments when it comes to defense, not only generally, but also when it comes to unique capabilities to defend territories like Greenland. So they're buying more F-35s, they're working on air-to-air refueling, they have bought these P-8 Boeings, the long-range drones, billions invested there in American equipment necessary to defend Denmark, NATO, but also territories like Greenland. So we are really working together here. And my only worry is, how do we stay safe? against the Russians, against any other adversary. Look at what China is doing in rapidly building up its own armed forces, but also North Koreans and others who might wish us ill, and not well at least. And therefore, that's my role, and I think we will get there. No, not at all, and I think we are really working in the right direction here.
Pa pratimo ovu situaciju.
Yes, we are a responsible NATO member, and we are very serious in taking over commitments and meeting the commitments. Politically, we have already, I've already commented on your question, so such a huge transformation that we are seeing is a step forward in terms of spending for defense, and this was unthinkable a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, some NATO members never imagined spending more than 2%, and now the situation is different because the circumstances have changed in the past several years. And we were complacent, too complacent, and we had to snap out of it. Today, we have to rely on our own forces. We need to be interoperable. We need to create conditions with our allies to make sure that those who want to destabilize the world have the smallest possible maneuvering space. Thank you.
Morat ćemo ga češće